Great. Thank you so much, Dominique. Well, again, welcome to this webinar. We're very excited. We have three wonderful people from the University of Wisconsin University System speaking. I'm Bonnie Lipton. I'm a prevention specialist at SPRC. We have Valerie Donovan from University of Wisconsin-Madison speaking, Jennifer Meulenkamp, which hopefully I pronounced that right, Jennifer, from UW-Eau Claire, and Kelly Tipton from UW-Milwaukee. And just to quickly go over the learning objectives for today, we're going to discuss why it's important to include students in planning and coordinating campus suicide prevention efforts, describe different models for engaging students, and identify new opportunities on their campus for engaging students in suicide prevention efforts. So before we get started, I'm going to have you guys chat in again. I was wondering if you could chat in what challenges you have faced in partnering with students. I know there can be a number of things. Sometimes it's students are super busy, not enough time. So let's hear what challenges you have faced. And if you could just chat that in, and I'll read out some responses. So Kendra Bermsock, I hope I pronounced your last name right, said commitment. Heard that. Yep, I get that. Students are really busy. Katie Parsons said we are a commuter campus. So Rebecca Boone said scheduling. Yeah, that's also really tough. When I used to work at Tufts University running a GLS grant. And I remember we worked with the Active Minds group, and they said, hey, you want to come to our meetings? They're at 10 o'clock on Monday nights. And I said, what, 10 o'clock? I'm sleeping. I can't do that. But that was the time that worked for them. So certainly students are very busy, and getting to make time with them is tough. Typing in your thoughts on different challenges, and hopefully we can address ways to overcome those challenges during this webinar. Jane said student organizations usually meet after hours. Yep, definitely, like at 10 o'clock at night, which is no good. Well, it's good for them. And Julie George said those who want to get involved often exhibit personality traits and can make this even more challenging. PD trait, personality disorder, is that what PD stands for? Julie, if you could write in, yes, it does stand for personality disorder. No, that's okay. Don't feel sorry for saying that. I should know what PD stands for. Kendra says lower student population in the summer especially. Yes, that's definitely an issue. And we'll just look at a few more responses, and then we will get started. Elizabeth said, I think it can be difficult to both encourage students to use their own voice in messages while also encouraging safe messaging. Elizabeth, that is such a great point. You really hit that on the head right there. And Sarah Belstock said trying to engage students in evidence-based approaches, and Sarah would especially know that since she has now worked on 2 GLS grants. And so we'll just take a couple more responses and then get started. And Jane said, finding the time to train students on using sensitivity around the topic when they are volunteering at suicide prevention efforts, such as vigils. Yes, great point. So a lot of education has to happen. Well, we'll get started. Those are really great. Thank you so much for sharing them. Our first speaker today is Valerie Donovan, who is the Suicide Prevention Coordinator from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Valerie, the University of Wisconsin-Madison was a Garrett Lee Smith grantee for Cohort 6. And I also want to say that if you have any questions for Valerie during her presentation, we will have a Q&A period after her presentation, and you can also chat in your questions while she's speaking, and we'll read them out to her at the end of the presentation. Thanks. Take it away, Valerie.
Thank you, Bonnie. I hope folks can hear me all right. So my name is Valerie. I work at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I want to start off by giving a little bit of background and context about our campus specifically. So we're going to be sharing a variety of examples of ways that we engage students on our campus, and I think it can be helpful to know a little bit about what our campus climate is like in thinking about ways that some of these might translate to your own campuses. So UW-Madison is a part of the University of Wisconsin system. As Bonnie mentioned, we are the flagship institution in the system and are a four-year public research institution. We have about 43,000 students on our campus, with about 30,000 of those being undergraduates, and about 22,000 employees for our university. We are also, in addition to being kind of a larger institution, we are very decentralized. And so a lot of the challenges that I'm going to kind of touch on have to do with the fact that we are very decentralized on our campus. Something else that I think is notable about our institution and maybe how my work differs from Jennifer and Kelly's is that I work in the health services on our campus, and we actually have an integrated health center for UW-Madison. I work specifically on prevention. I do not have a clinical role, but we are all under the same health services umbrella, so I'm in the same building and same organization as medical and mental health staff for our campus. Which is super beneficial for a lot of reasons, but I do not have a clinical role. So I guess the next kind of piece of framing information that I want to provide is that engagement and participation really are values that inform our work across campus, and that's something that I really take to heart when I am working on suicide prevention programming for our campus. And that no decisions that we make are made without the participation of those who will be impacted by the decisions. And for us, our primary audience is students. And so we really try to make sure we have very intentional opportunities for students to give their input into what we are working on with regards to suicide prevention. So this first slide that you see really just lists a few examples of engagement activities that we do on campus to incorporate student voices into our work. Since we don't have a ton of time, I'm not going to go through all of these very in depth, but I wanted to share them with folks so you can feel free to reach out and consult. I'm happy to share resources or answer questions about any of these. So we have registered student organizations that I advise on our campus, student employment opportunities, opportunities for students to intern or volunteer or do service learning projects where they don't get paid but they get academic credit. We have a campus-wide council with student representation on it that's very strategic and intentional. And then we also have a student committee, which is what I'm going to mainly be focusing on in my portion of the presentation. So I want to start off by talking a little bit more about our student organizations on our campus. I mentioned that I advise the registered student organizations that work on mental health on our campus. And I know that sometimes gathering student commitment can be a struggle. We actually don't struggle with that as much as we struggle with coordination and alignment. We have a very large group of active and engaged students who want to work with UHS. So we have 7 student organizations that are working on mental health, suicide prevention, recovery, wellness, and all sorts of relevant topics that want to connect with the suicide prevention program. So these are the 7 groups that I work with, and I'm happy to touch more about what they specifically focus on. But this is just to give you an idea of how many different organizations we have. So in terms of working with student organizations as a formal advisor, some of the lessons that I've learned over the last few years have been really, like I mentioned, around coordination and alignment. We've tried to streamline kind of our communication among the organizations. They all want to work with us. They all want to receive training with us. So you can imagine that we get about 7 different requests each semester for speakers or trainings. And so what we've implemented is a once per semester training for all of our student organization leaders. And we set it up ourselves through the health services and host that training event, and we work with the organizations around their calendar of events and other activities for the semester. We've also implemented a listserv for these student organizations, which has been very helpful in getting them to communicate better among themselves and with us. So students use it to share resources, consult about maybe problems or trends that they're noticing on campus, to kind of problem solve different things that might come up as student org leaders. And then they also use it to promote each other's events and kind of cross-share information about what they're observing on campus. Each of these organizations also had their own training manual that they used for, to gain active membership or for their leaders. And so another project that we worked on with our student orgs was pulling them together and making sure those training manuals were aligned and informed by best practices, and that UHS could kind of sign off on all of their emergency protocols and things like that. Another thing that we found really helpful with student orgs is that most of them have point systems for how their members become active, and so we've been able to work with them to give points for attending some of our events and to cross-post some of the things that our campus partners are doing as relevant for the points that they receive. Another example of our student engagement is through our student employees, as well as our internships and other opportunities for students to receive academic credit for working with us. So we've kind of worked with a variety of academic departments on our campus, which are listed in the red box there. HDFS stands for Human Development and Family Studies. And one of the most common frequently asked questions that we get when we're out tabling or at other events is, how can I work for you? How can I volunteer with your organization? And so one of the things that we found to be super helpful is to have a wish list of projects that are ready, set for students that are interested in receiving credit for an independent project that they work on with us. So we try to organize that in a way that students will always have an opportunity to partner with us on projects, since we don't really have volunteer opportunities with us. And I'm happy to share additional resources about our employment, our position descriptions, and kind of what sorts of projects our students' employees work on. But I think some of the other presenters are going to focus on that a little bit more. So the main topic that I wanted to focus on with regards to how we engage students on our campus is what's called our Mental Health Matters Student Committee. I mentioned previously that we have a campus-wide suicide prevention council with student representation. We also realized, though, that it would be helpful to have a space that is just for student voices to kind of advise and inform the decisions that we make and the work that we do. So this committee is entirely made up of students. It's a forum for direct input from our student stakeholders that really helps us better serve students, meet their mental health needs, foster leadership skills in students with interests in these topics on our campus, and really encourage and support student advocates around these issues. And so it was kind of set up intending to be parallel to the campus-wide council, kind of a space for direct and formal participation in the work that we're doing. And that's really one of the main places that we look if we're ever trying to get some student input or feedback around new ideas or existing programs that we're updating. And that's been very beneficial on our campus. With regards to the student committee, so we've had this committee in place for one year now. We meet once a month at the health services. We have a group of 10 students that participate on this committee. And so we have kind of a list of some lessons that we've learned over this first year, and we're continuing to update and change things around a little bit as we learn more. But I thought I would share a few of our kind of initial takeaways from this experience. One of the things that was so helpful for us was to have an established reporting structure. So we didn't want students to come to a room, give us feedback, and then feel like they didn't know where that information went. So we set up a system where the student committee has a liaison who is also appointed to the campus-wide council, and they report out to the council members once per semester. And that is a room of decision makers and administrators on campus. So it really is an opportunity for the conversations that happen in the student committee to be elevated to a higher level on campus. We also learned that it was very helpful to have a formal membership structure for the students. There is an application process, a one-year term length requirement, which really helps increase the accountability and clarifies expectations for members. And students have also said that they found that helpful because it felt like a real resume builder. It was something that they could formally lay out as an experience that they had on campus. One thing that we also learned is that students were trying to give some feedback on very specific individual experiences with the health center, and so we made sure that we infused in the committee some other information about how students can give feedback on their services. And then moving forward, just continuing to increase the range of activities that we provide and having a student co-chair that committee for more leadership opportunities. And I know I'm a little bit over time, so I'll turn it back over for Q&A then.
Thanks, Valerie. That was great. We had one question. Well, first let me say if anyone has any questions for Valerie, please type it into the chat, and there will also be a chance to ask questions at the end of the webinar after everyone speaks. One question we had was, what was the name of the communication tool that you were talking about that you use?
So we use, with our student organizations, a listserv on our campus. It's called a WISC list, so that all of the leaders and members of those 7 student organizations are on an email list together where they can all post and reply to one another and consult about different issues that arise.
Great. And then Cynthia Bryant wanted to know who chairs the committee.
Yeah, so the first year of this committee, the student committee, the chairs were myself and then a representative from our mental health staff. I mentioned we're an integrated health center, so it was really great to have both a prevention and clinical perspective there. And moving forward, we're also going to have a student co-chair who's going to take the lead with much more of the facilitating discussion.
Oh, that's great. So that takes a little bit of the workload off of you and empowers the students a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Charlene asked, how do you recruit members?
Yeah, I'm going to assume that's for the student committee. So one of the main ways that we did recruitment for that position, or for those open seats in the committee, was through our campus-wide suicide prevention council. So that has representation of kind of all the offices across campus. And so we shared the opportunity with them and asked them to kind of promote it to students that they thought might be interested or be a good fit for that. And then we relied heavily on our campus partners to share it with students because we really wanted to make sure we had a diverse representation of students participating.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's fantastic. So we're going to move on to Jennifer. And I also just wanted to say real quick to let people know that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on the SPRC website in a few weeks. So Jennifer Muhlenkamp is the project director for University of Smith grant, and they are a cohort 8 grantee. So take it away, Jennifer.
All right, great, thank you. So just like Valerie did, I want to give everyone just a real brief background about the size of campus for the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. So we are part of the UW system, but we are actually one of the satellite campuses, and so we are a 4-year liberal arts university focused primarily on undergraduate education, and we have an annual campus enrollment right around 10,000. It kind of fluctuates between 10,000 to 11,000. And so so again, I think probably the primary difference is that we're a little bit smaller than, of course, UW-Madison, and we are primarily an undergraduate focus. So what I was going to really talk to you about today, since each of us are kind of taking a different piece here, is with our grant, we have partnered with a lot of the student groups that Valerie talked about and that many of you identified in the survey before the start of the webinar. But today what I'm really going to do is focus on some of the student roles that we've specifically created in our efforts related to our GLS grant. And we specifically have designed these as opportunities to not only help promote our efforts on campus, but to also help develop leadership skills within the students that we work with. We also see these as key elements to our ability to sustain our grant efforts once our funding is once it's completed. So what you can see here is in kind of the puzzle pieces are some of the key roles that we've created for students to be leaders with regards to suicide prevention on our campus. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail for each of these pieces. So I'll start with talking about our student advisory group. So our group operates similarly to what Valerie was just talking about, but on maybe a little bit of a smaller scale. So I recruit members for our student advisory group through a number of venues. So I'll try to recruit through our start of this the beginning of every semester, we have kind of a student organization recruitment fair. And so we will have a table there and recruit that way. And then we do a lot of recruiting through word of mouth and students who've been involved and pieces like that. Within our student advisory group, we've really set it up to have what I've called the coordinator. And so that's the lead representative that basically acts like a co-chair. And so I oversee the student advisory group, and then I have the coordinator or the lead member who directly reports to me and works with my immediate team staff that we have that are helping to implement our grant programming. So that student sits in our team meetings and has some awareness about everything that's going on campus. And then that individual helps to co-lead our meetings when we have our student advisory group meetings. We also have a role for people to be a member of the advisory groups. They come, they participate in meetings and help out with activities. And then we also have at least one, and we try to get a few more, but at least one representative that is also connected to our Student Senate's mental health committee. They actually just passed a resolution this past year to have a formalized mental health committee within our Student Senate as a role for them. And so we have a member from there that sits on our advisory group. As you can see with the arrows, some of the key roles that our student advisory group do is they really help with some of our outreach programming and messaging campaigns. And so they come up with ideas. I am there to help guide them to make sure that they follow safe messaging guidelines, have some evidence-based background to them, but really am trying to harness their creativity. And so they create different messaging campaigns where we do lawn sign posters, digital scrollers, and a whole host of some interactive displays and tabling events. And then we also ask them to help us when we do larger events on campus so that we have some extra student bodies to draw students in, but then to also just help with some of the administration of the events. And then, like I said, we have our Student Senate member who we then integrate with Student Senate efforts to help promote mental health in general, and we support programming back and forth.
Lost Jennifer. Jennifer, I think you accidentally went on. Are you back?
Well, when you were talking, Bonnie, I had you phasing in and out as well. So I don't know.
Okay, so we're having audio difficulties, and I apologize for that. Keep on going. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Jennifer.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'll try to do everything I can here. But I am on my handheld, so we're good. Okay, so moving on, a couple other opportunities we have for student leadership is our Lifesavers peer educator role. So we have designed our own kind of gatekeeper training that is implemented within a classroom setting. And so we go through an application process and extensive training and actually train students who tend to be juniors or seniors across different disciplines, but we train them to be peer educators, and they deliver our Lifesavers curriculum in the different classrooms. And these individuals get service learning credit, which is a requirement for their degree here at UW-Eau Claire, and so they can earn their service learning credit through that, as well as many of these students have interest in going into fields where being a peer educator is a great applied experience, such as those who are interested in social work or counseling or education, or this year we have someone from communication and journalism. So we give them opportunities to really develop public speaking skills, as well as to learn about practices for delivering information of a sensitive nature. Then another role that we have that also facilitates our ability to evaluate our programs that we implement here on campus is that I have a research collaborator. And this is anywhere from 1 to 3 students who works with me on doing program evaluation, so helping to track outcomes related to our grant, as well as just doing general evaluations of different workshops, programs, and events that we have. And so these individuals are primarily responsible for helping to generate the questions and data collection methods that we're going to use. They track the data, they'll analyze the data, and then for some students who are interested in doing specific research projects, they can become involved with me either through the grant or through some of the other research I do within this area to do independent projects that also can inform then some of our efforts on campus for programming. So this is a leadership role for students who really want to develop program evaluation skills. And then many of them actually present our outcome data at our campus research day. So that's another, I guess, development skill that they have. We're currently working, I'm going to pilot an internship in suicide prevention this coming year. And so what this role will involve, I'm hoping to have 2 or maybe 3 interns. And so this is, again, a credit-bearing experience that students can have that allows them to basically apply some of their educational experiences to suicide prevention on campus. And so as part of the internship in suicide prevention, the individual who I mentioned before who coordinates our student advisory board, coordinating that student advisory board would be one of the responsibilities for this internship experience. The student would also help with managing some of our social media outlets for our safe messaging campaigns and the outreach that we do there. We are partnering with our statewide texting crisis line, and so one of the potential opportunities, this is optional for the student who wants to do the internship, would be to go through the training through that office and actually provide texting-based crisis services. And then they would also have a primary role in being a liaison to other campus groups that do similar programming and doing outreach in that way. We're also, as part of this internship experience, developing a mentor role that would complement our current Let's Talk program. And the Let's Talk program is a program that originated at Cornell. It's basically a couple hours of drop-in time where students can come in to a non-threatening environment such as the library or the student center and meet one-on-one. Currently, we do it one-on-one with a counselor for like a 10 or 15-minute consultation. And so we're looking at revising that, again, for sustainability and staffing issues, to be able to have student mentors be part of the Let's Talk program so that they can offer consultation and then referral services. And so that's something in development, and that's really appealing to the students on our campus who are interested in pursuing advanced education and training in the mental health and helping fields. So one of the things I did want to touch on briefly is as we've tried to develop some of these different roles on campus for our students to help support our programming, but to also help foster leadership development in them, are some of the strengths and challenges that we faced. And I think some people raised these in the earlier chat. But we have found, especially with our student advisory board, that the enthusiasm and the willingness to actually commit to show up at events and to assist with things and to do programming really kind of fizzles as the semester winds down, or I guess ramps up for them, especially around high stress times like midterms and finals, which is when you definitely want to be out doing more outreach. And so one of the things we found that works to kind of get people engaged and have an increased commitment to the program is to have projects and ideas for them to get involved with immediately, and to, if you have a large group, to break off into smaller teams and have each team be charged with a task to complete. We do a lot of group brainstorming and have the students design many of our outreach and messaging campaigns, and so they really like that, and that keeps the enthusiasm there. And then to also have our regular meeting dates planned up front, so that they just know what they're going to commit to throughout the semester. And I ask for a semester by semester commitment for our students. In terms of recruitment and sustained involvement, to see if we can get a 1 or more year commitment for students who are interested, what I'm finding is definitely incentivizing the roles helps a lot. So not only as a resume builder, but certainly being able to offer service learning credit and the internship experiences is really useful. And while we have the grant, I have some money to pay some of the student leader roles, but once that's gone, the credit-based incentives is good. And as I said, we recruit from our student organization recruitment sessions as well. And then the final challenges that we've really encountered is finding enough personnel to carefully supervise all these different student programs and roles. And so what we're working on right now is we have a number of different peer educator programs across campus, and so we're working as a campus to try to centralize a request center for the peer educator programs, as well as to centralize training for the peer educators and just basic presentation and leadership skills. We're also working closely with other groups to collaborate with existing programs, so we're not duplicating programs, and again, kind of tapping into similar resources across here in a role, maybe step into what I would call a senior student supervisor who can help to oversee some of the basic training or day-to-day operations of some of the student work. And then one of the things we actually have done just recently this summer is to really, I think what's really important is we hear so many great ideas from so many campuses, and we're like, oh, we want to do this, we want to do this, and then we have to realize what's really feasible given the size of our campus and the personnel resources we do and don't have. And so our team, my larger staff team, actually sat down and we really looked at what is feasible, what can we do, what can't we do given our size and our current resources. And so I think that's really important to do, to recognize that some of the great things that campuses do may not really be feasible for your campus, and then that can help things feel more manageable. So at this time then, I guess I'm ready for some questions.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. That was great. One question that we have is, what programs or where do you recruit your student research collaborators from? Are they graduate level?
Great question. We're an undergraduate university, so we do not have graduate students. Our campus is known for its strong collaboration between faculty and undergraduate student collaborative research. One of the benefits I have is I'm a faculty member in the psychology department, and so I recruit my student research collaborators predominantly from our undergraduate majors in psychology, but I have also had students who've had me as a faculty member or something like that and know what I do, who are interested in research and kind of helping with program evaluation, who have been in nursing and social work and education, and so then I'll collaborate from them too. Sometimes I'll do a general announcement or call, otherwise I'll go to different faculty and say, do you have a good student who might be interested? But a lot of times I actually have students who hear about our program, which we call SPRC, and come to me directly.
So it sounds like a lot of this involves partnerships with professors and others on campus to identify students.
Yes, yep.
And another question we have is, how are you able to offer academic credits for internships?
We have internship credits available. So what I do, since I'm housed in the psychology department, I can offer our psychology internship credits. And so it's a psychology-based credit that they get.
Okay,
so
great.
I offer it like a class.
Oh, so that's really nice that you're able to do that. And maybe on other campuses, by building partnerships with the psychology department on their campuses, they would be able to do the same.
Yes, definitely. I would say definitely psychology, social work, and possibly, depending upon their relationships, possibly nursing and stuff, fields that tend to work with mental health.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. We're going to move on to Kelly Tipton now. And Kelly is the Suicide Prevention Project Coordinator for University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which was a GLS Cohort 6 grantee. And just a reminder that we'll be having a open discussion at the end of this webinar. So if you have any questions that didn't get answered, feel free to type them in or just speak them later. Take it away, Kelly.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Bonnie said, my name is Kelly Tipton, and I am the coordinator for UWM Suicide Prevention Project. And we are a grant-funded project that started with grant funding. Our period of time ended actually just this past January. So I'm going to go over some of the engagement activities that we have here that we try to do with our grant funding at UWM to just definitely get that student voice involved in all of the projects and the efforts that we wanted to do on campus. The first one that's listed here is the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Mental Health. So this is an advisory committee that started shortly before our grant funds kicked in and before we received that announcement. And it is a committee that's made up of various entities from across campus. We have our counseling director, who is one of the co-chairs. We have a faculty member from the Department of Psychology, who is also the co-chair of that committee. But we also have representation from various individuals from the Student Affairs, including the Dean of Students Office, some of our resource centers. We have representation from the UWM Police Department, as well as Human Resources. So there are a lot of different voices on that committee. With our grant funds, we were able to hire several peer coordinators. And so in their position description, we had them as members of this advisory committee to come to the meetings, to share their voice, to hear about efforts that are going on across campus, and then to add that student's perspective that sometimes we don't hear as staff members or we're not quite aware of. So meetings happen probably about 4 times a year, so it wasn't an intense schedule for our peers, as they already have a lot on their plate. Another activity that we had them engaged in from the very beginning, we were very intentional about developing a brand and developing a logo and an overall look for everything that we wanted to present to our campus community. And so our peers had the opportunity, if you notice on this slide in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the logo that we ended up settling on. But they had the option between that logo and another example. And what they did was they went out into our student union and did some surveying efforts to get some feedback from their peers about what do these logos represent to you. When you see this, what comes to mind? Is there anything that can be done better with either of these options? And so we settled on the one that you see on our slide right now, but the students also were able to bring us feedback to say, I think we should add a tagline and make sure that it's very clear what this logo happens to represent and what information it may present in some of the resources or in some of the activities. So that was key. Additionally, getting that student voice into these outreach and awareness events and giving them the license to plan events that will speak to their peers and that will speak to them and that they'll enjoy putting on. Their first major event was an event that they titled Why I Keep Going, and it was a mental health awareness fair. This was a huge success for our students. We gave them some guidance, and of course there were checks and balances along the way, but they really took initiative on planning an event with an interactive activity, so they would ask students, and we also had a lot of faculty and staff come by, to write their reason for why they keep going on a whiteboard. And we got their permission, and students were able to take pictures and post these on the Facebook page. So with all of the individuals that stopped by, we had over about 200 people participating in this activity. And it was a launch into some of the activities that they would do further down the road throughout the year, but also just to highlight the importance of taking care of your mental health and promoting emotional well-being. They were also tasked with collaborating with several resource centers on campus and in our greater Milwaukee community and asking them to volunteer to bring resources and set up tabling within this event. In addition, they partnered with our counseling center to host this event. I believe it was the day before the National Depression Screening Day. And so our counselors were available to do depression screening and offer screening that day, and from their feedback, that was one of their best screening days that they had in a few years. So it was a huge collaborative effort, and the students were pleased to be able to take the reins and move forward as such. Another event that they partnered with in the beginning and has been a great collaboration for them moving forward is an event called Panther Pause. And this is an activity that our social cultural programming office hosts every year during finals time. And it's an opportunity for students to come in, de-stress, do some activities. So our peer coordinators had a section during that event at one point in time. And then moving forward, they partnered with them as peer coordinators, and they partnered with them as a student organization, which I'll kind of mention in a moment. With funding from the grant, of course, it's going to end at some point in time, so we had to think of ways to encourage our students to continue moving forward without a paid position and to carry on their interest and their desire to get the information out to their peers. One way that we were able to do that is two of our peers were able to start Active Minds after they finished working with us. And we supported them getting started. So for example, we were able to provide them with a set amount of funds to help with buying those initial resources and tools they need to get the organization started. For example, a table skirt, T-shirts, things that they could use and would be helpful for them. Additionally, at the same time as our peers were moving on from us and launching Active Minds, there was another group of students on campus that started the NAMI on Campus group, and we were able to support them in some ways as well, not necessarily funding support, but to get them involved in some activities, to be present at some of their events and provide them with resources. So those are just a few of those engagement activities that we had our students really speak to and be involved with. When we talk about lessons learned from those activities, including the students from the very beginning is key, and just getting their thoughts and their ideas, because there are a million and probably one items that students have and thoughts and ideas that they have, and we may never consider as staff. We may be on a completely different pathway than where we need to be to reach our student population. Being flexible with the student schedules and setting clear expectations at the same time. So we ran into a lot of issues. Our students here at UWM, we have about 27,000 students. It's a commuter campus. Our students have a lot of responsibilities, whether it's taking care of themselves, taking care of family members, living off campus, commuting, working 2-3 jobs at a time. So they're definitely very busy. But we also want to make sure that they are adhering to what they're signing up for. So in all, I believe we hired about 8 students total. We lost a few along the way because they weren't able to meet those expectations, but we ended up with a core who were very dedicated. So it took a little bit of learning and process trying right there. Sustainability-wise, we continue to invite our students to join the advisory committee. Just because it'll be beneficial for them, they can bring information to us about what their student organization is doing, and just to be able to cross paths and touch bases and keep them in the loop. They have an opportunity to interact with individuals and faculty members and staff members that they may have never crossed paths with. Additionally, continued outreach to those organizations, those student groups, the resource centers. I tend to make a point to maybe stop by resource centers quite regularly and reach out to some of these organizations just to say, hey, how are you doing? Any events coming up? If you need any support, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to provide resources and to be present if need be. Another way that we really try to get students involved is in some leadership and training activities. 2 I'll speak to today. We were able to do a depression screening program with our health center. So we have also an integrative health center. We have counseling, medical, pharmacy, and lab all in one building here. And so one of the ways that we wanted to increase that net for our students, where we're capturing students who may have never been identified as needing services, is to offer a screening program in our health center. and it was a two-step screening process. Because of the limited staff that we have in the health center, we definitely knew that we needed to hire someone to support the second tier of screening. We decided to work with master's level PhD students to fulfill that role, and that has been quite helpful. We were able to have them in a paid position for a couple of years with grant funding, and then we were able to transition them to a practicum experience once funding had ended. Another development or training program that we have is we recently launched a 1-hour training last fall, and we did this in response to a lack of getting a general student population through our Campus Connect training, which is about 2.5 hours long. And so we wanted to offer something that we could road test and take to classrooms, to meetings. But in addition, we wanted to have a training where we could have a student either co-facilitate or facilitate with a staff member being present at all times, because hearing that information from a peer can definitely be a little bit more beneficial than maybe hearing it from a staff member or a faculty member. Students might be receptive to that information a little bit better. And I noticed that I am short on time, so I'm going to kind of breeze through some of the last slides that I have. With depression screening, we had limited clinic space and limited funding, so we had to be mindful of that moving forward. We were able to transition that into a practicum placement and work with our School of Social Work to have a second-year master's student play that role. With our training program, facilitator availability in regards to our students and their presentation skills, so really working with them to hone that, and also being flexible with them, because sometimes trainings have been requested during class periods, which students may also be in class at that time. So being flexible with that. And then also just ongoing recruitment for students who may be interested in doing this and have the presence and the dedication to presenting this type of information. One of the last activities that I'll mention is our evaluation period activity, and we definitely evaluated from the very beginning because we wanted to determine if we are having the impact and intended outcome that we set forth. And so our survey, it's called a USPAC, UWM Suicide Prevention Project Awareness and Knowledge Survey. Long name, which is why we have the acronym up there. And it's a survey that seeks to assess the extent of exposure to efforts on campus and possible changes in knowledge. And during our administrations, we would send the survey to a random sample of about 2,500 students. What we were able to determine from our surveys is that definitely these evaluations have helped inform our programming, so to let us know we're either on the right track or we need to make some changes midstream. We also know, as you may know, on campuses, students are over-surveyed, and so response rates may not be as high as we would like. But also with this particular survey, we didn't see any significant changes in survey results from year 1 to year 2. So moving forward, we will continue to modify either this evaluation or create a new one now that we've done it for several times, and especially now that we have new programming on campus, but also look for other ways to evaluate and get feedback from students that, that will help with our efforts moving forward. So in summary, and I think I'm right on the cusp of my time right now, we definitely were intentional about engaging students' voices from the very beginning. For us, we found that it was very helpful in creating some resources that were student-focused. We were able to build relationships with student organizations, and most importantly, we were very intentional about trying to send a consistent message across campus. So, for example, with our branding and our logo, we wanted to make sure that everything we put out, A, it was visible and people would start to recognize that, B, that it was information that had been vetted and reviewed and it was sound. And to share that with these student organizations. So, for example, we have resource cards, and really try and get those into the hands of students so they're passing them out too. So there is this consistent look and consistent information that's being passed around through campus. Providing those unique training and development opportunities for students to participate. And then also, we started in the beginning, maybe not during the first year, but definitely in the second year, really identifying ways to sustain the efforts that we were doing on campus. So trying to forward think, if we want to do this activity, we want to do this program, if we want to create these resources, how are they going to be sustainable after our funds end? And really thinking about that from the beginning. With that, I am just about over time, so I will turn it back over to you, Bonnie.
Thanks so much, Kelly. That was great. We do have a couple of questions for you. Do you have suggestions regarding potential grants to apply for and or how to recruit campus partners and or faculty members to support counseling center staff on writing grants due to lack of time, resources, or expertise?
I'm not familiar with looking for additional grants. We actually just had the SAMHSA grant during this whole period of time, so I wouldn't be able to speak to what possible grants are out there right now that you could look for to support that. And I'm just reading the rest of your question just to make sure that I covered everything. Writing grants due to lack of time and resources. We were able to, in the beginning for our SAMHSA grant specifically, we did work with the psychology department, and we worked with their administration department of grants. So that was a huge support for us. The initial names on the grant were from the psychology department, and the funding was housed in the psychology department as well. So we had an awesome team in that way, but outside of that, I'm not sure if I'd be able to speak to that.
And is USpark something that was created at UW-Milwaukee or specifically for UW-Milwaukee, or is that something that's available that can be shared more broadly?
It's something actually that we based off of the Youth Speaks. I don't know if you're familiar, if you remember that, Bonnie. It was a survey tool that was initially laid out with the, oh goodness, the name escapes me right now, but was one of our funders. And so we revised it for our purposes. I can definitely share that information with you or pass it to Bonnie and she can pass that along.
Yeah. Elizabeth, if you're interested in that, why don't you email me and I can send that to you. And Adrian wants to know, what specific depression screening tool did you use, or did you create your own?
We used, so it was a two-tier screening system. We had the PHQ-2, the PHQ-9, and then the CSSRS. So the PHQ-1, I'm sorry, the first step, PHQ-2, students would come into the center. They would take that on their own. Our medical staff, whether it's the MA or the nurse, they would collect that information and indicate if they would recommend the student continue to Tier 2 screening. During the Tier 2 screening, they would complete the PHQ-9 and the CSSRS.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over now to a general questions for everyone. We just really have time for about one or two questions. So if you have a question for Valerie, Kelly, and Jennifer, you can either type it in or speak it into your phone line, but chatting it in is pretty easier. And something I wanted to ask everyone is, what do you do? You know, we talk about how sometimes students don't understand the importance of safe messaging or don't know about safe messaging or using evidence-based guides, and that we share that with them. But what do you do when the students are unwilling to follow safe messaging guidelines or use evidence-based practices? How do you get their buy-in on that if they're resistant?
This is Valerie. Hope everyone can hear me again. One of the things on our campus that we've developed is a basically like a prevention 101 sort of training for our student organizations that includes information on primary prevention principles, best practices around messaging, information about the socio-ecological model, and basically a whole kind of a toolkit that we can often point back to if students kind of come to us with ideas that maybe are well-intended but not supported by evidence to be super safe or effective. One of the things that we created is a guide for how to talk about suicide, and that's been really helpful for a lot of our student organizations that want to facilitate discussions. But our approach has really been to share that information with organizations kind of early on in the year as we start to work with them, kind of laying those expectations out ahead of time.
And is that something that you would be willing to share with others, Valerie?
Sure, I'm happy to share that.
Guide? Okay, great. If you're interested in seeing a version of that guide, just email me at blipton@edc.org. I wrote it in the chat. So we unfortunately only have 3 minutes left, so I think we need to wrap up. There were some really great questions today. So here's the contact information for everyone, for Valerie, Jennifer, or Kelly. So you could also just email Valerie directly at vmdonovan@uhs.wisc.edu for a copy of that guide, or Kelly or Jennifer or me. So feel free to reach out. And I, again, wanted to say the webinar will be posted on the SPRC website, and there's the URL. I want to thank our presenters for being so awesome and doing a great job today, and I hope that everyone will be leaving here with some really great ideas on ways to engage students in future projects. So thanks very much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.